Good morning. A reading from The Meaning by Michael Coffey. In our first reading, Pastor Michael Coffey takes the sophisticated telling of Jesus' cosmic beginnings in the Gospel of John and levels it out, reminding us that flesh that Jesus was given was just as messy as our own. And the Word becomes flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John 1:14. You wish it could be put into words and paragraphs, recited and parsed and memorized and philosophized, offset printed in a leather-bound book, closed and shelved and dusted for good company. But Logos, Sophia, meaning divine reason, comes to us through the cosmic entanglement of body and God, with birth pangs and dying pains, and all the light and love you can squeeze in between. So that the meaning of God, if there ever could be such a thing for us to comprehend, lives in created flesh and blood and heart and mind, suffers mercy without explanation or cause, births hope without limits or permission, delights in life for all its holy humanity.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. By him, all things were made 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 by him, the Word was God. All things were made by him, was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was
And the Word was
with God,
and the Word, and the Word,
and the Word, and the Word was God.
As I Sit Quietly by Angela Morgan. After giving birth to Christ, Mary must have felt what many mothers have felt, a deep connection to something ancient in the difficult and joyous experience of giving birth to a human being. As she begins to go to sleep after giving birth, she must have known that she was connected to all things and the Creator of all things. As I sit quietly here in my chair, sewing or reading or braiding my hair, human and simple my lot and my share, I'm aware of the systems that swing through the aisles of creation on heavenly wing. I am aware of a marvelous thing. Trail of the comets in furious flight, thunders of beauty that shatter the night, terrible triumph of pageants that march to the trumpets of time of eternity's arch. I am aware of the splendor that ties all the things of the earth with the things of the skies. Here in my body, the heavenly heat. Here in my flesh, the melodious beat of the planets that circle divinity's feet. As I silently sit here in my chair, I am aware.
in this first reading of 2 from Jan Richardson, she wonders if we quite understand that even Christ's birth was as human as any other, which means that it was a messy, painful, and wondrous process. "Give me a call if anything breaks," my mother said to my sister and me as we concluded our phone conversation. Like Sally's water. I turned to look at my pregnant sister as Scott and I chuckled. Sally's mouth was agape, but not with laughter. The phone dropped from her hand as she pulled at her skirt. "We'll call you back," I sputtered to my brother. It was time. The weeks and months of waiting, wondering, and planning quickly dissolved into water, blood, groans, and deep cries as Sally and the baby labored together into the night. Nurses poked and monitored her. My brother-in-law and I plied her with wet rags, ice chips, and soothing music. We held her as she pushed. She remembers little of this. She had a baby to birth. A shattering groan, a final great push, a rush of blood and water, and baby Scott. And I wonder, as this woman's groans gave way to a new child's cries, did the stars dance in ancient recognition? Did they remember a scene that our gleaming nativities and depictions of pastel-garbed Mary, Joseph, and Jesus belie? A scene of laboring, of groaning, of birthing's great pure effort. What emotions must have gripped Mary and Joseph as Mary lay, homeless and a stranger, in the labor of birthing? As her child strained against her flesh, did Mary regret her choice? From where did she draw her strength? Did anyone hear her cries? Today, do we hear the cries that rise from impoverished, makeshift places?
The
From The Moon is Always Whole by Jan L. Richardson. It is no accident that Jesus is said to have been born during the night, a time when the ancients felt most vulnerable to forces outside their homes. As Christ's birth shows us, even in our times of deepest darkness, the light shines somewhere and somehow, as Jan Richardson points out in this short story. I walk with Carrie under a full moon on the grounds of the only castle in New Zealand. Under its light, I tell her about a Barbara Kingsolver poem I have recently come across. Remember, the moon survives. It does, Kingsolver writes. Around the encroaching darkness, the moon bends herself and waits. Against the waxing and waning shadow, she writes, the moon is always whole. Carrie asked me if I believe this, believe in the constant wholeness of the moon. I think about the year past, about the rising and falling tide of sorrow that has played on my shores. I think of how I embrace the opportunity for this trip to another land and the possibility for a respite it would provide. But the tides run in this southern hemisphere as well, and I am dismayed by the flow of memory that pull me even here. I had thought to leave your shadow across the ocean. But here, beneath the full moon, I tell Carrie yes. Yes, the moon survives. Beneath the ebb and flow of darkness, it is waiting. I have seen it whole.
song that you're about to hear is called "To Us is Born Emmanuel." The word Emmanuel means God with us, reminding that Christ is always with us. In this poem, Mary Oliver cleans her home in preparation for God to be with her, as God was with Mary and with us always. Dear Lord, I've swept and I've washed, but still nothing is as shiny as it should be for you. Under the sink, for example, is an uproar of mice. It is the season of their many children. What shall I do? And under the eaves and through the walls, the squirrels have gnawed their ragged entrances. It is a season when they need shelter. So what should I do? And the raccoon limps into the kitchen and opens the cupboard while the dog snores. The cat hugs the pillow. What should I do? Beautiful is the new snow falling in the yard, and the fox who is staring boldly up the path at the door. And still I believe you will come, Lord. You will, when I speak to the fox, the sparrow, the lost dog, the shivering sea goose. Know that really I am speaking to you whenever I say, as I do all morning and all afternoon, come in, come in.
To us is